They dropped bombs on them, out of airplanes.
On who?
On coal miners, American coal miners in West Virginia.
Bombs on Americans in America.
1921. A ridge called Blair Mountain in Logan County, West Virginia. 10,000 men with rifles walking up one side of it. Gas bombs coming down through the trees on top of them.
This is Tarikh Parodi Radio, Mountain Station, Logan County, West Virginia. The year 1921.
5 days of shooting. Somewhere close to 1 million rounds fired.
1 million? How does anybody know that?
Because men went up that mountain 60 years later with metal detectors and dug the brass back out of the dirt. It is still coming out.
1 million rounds in 5 days between citizens of the same country, inside the borders of that country.
And when it was finished, the state did not charge those men with rioting. It did not charge them with murder.
With what then?
Treason. 985 men indicted for making war against the state of West Virginia.
That is the largest armed uprising on American soil since the Civil War. And it happened 4 years after the Great War ended. Most of the men on that mountain were veterans. Some of them wore their old army uniforms up the slope.
So here is the question this whole broadcast is going to answer. If it was that big, why did nobody teach it to you?
Say that again.
10,000 men, a mountain, airplanes, and for 50 years it was not in the West Virginia school books. Not by accident. Somebody took it out.
We will get to the man who took it out. He is the last act. And he is worse than the sheriff. But first you need to understand what these men were fighting about. Because if you think this is a story about wages, you will not believe the rest of it.
It was not wages?
It started there and went somewhere much stranger. A coal town in southern West Virginia was not a town. It was a property.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning the company owned the mine, and the house you slept in, and the store you bought your flour from, and the church you prayed in, and the school your children sat in, and the road between all of them. One deed, everything on it.
And the money?
The money was not money. It was scrip, company paper, good at the company store, and worthless everywhere else on earth.
So, you dig the coal, they pay you in coupons, and the coupons only spend in one building.
Their building. The wage leaves one company pocket and walks straight back into the other one. And the prices in that store were set by the same men who set your pay.
What were they actually asking for then? What was on the paper?
1912, Paint Creek, 7 demands. Recognize the union, end the mine guard system, the right to buy your food somewhere else. And this one, a ton shall weigh 2,000 pounds.
Wait. A ton did not weigh 2,000 pounds?
Not in every hollow. You were paid by the ton, and the company owned the scale, and the company hired the man who read it. In some fields, a ton meant 2,200 pounds. In some, it meant 2,500.
So they invented a bigger ton.
They invented a bigger ton. The miners were asking in writing for arithmetic. That is how far down this had gone.
And if a man complained?
Then he met the mine guards. And the mine guards were the whole disease in one sentence. The Baldwin Fells Detective Agency, out of Bluefield, Virginia, private men hired by the coal operators and then sworn in as deputies by the county sheriff.
So they carry a badge.
They carry the legal authority of a policeman and the paycheck of an employee. A policeman whose job description is his employer's mood.
That cannot be legal.
It was completely legal. That is the part people cannot get past. Nothing in this story is a conspiracy. It is all on paper, filed with the county, in daylight.
And what did they actually do all day?
They rode the trains and watched who got off. They read the mail. They sat in the back of the church. They kept a list. And when a man signed the union card, they carried out the eviction.
Because the house belongs to the mine.
Because the house belongs to the mine. Sign the card, lose the job. Lose the job, lose the roof. Often the same afternoon. Furniture out on the road, children sitting on the furniture, and rain coming down the hollow.
Where does a family go?
Into a tent. The union bought tents by the hundred and pitched them on the one thing the company did not own. The creek bottom, the public road, anywhere outside the deed. Whole towns of canvas. Through the winter.
But this was every coal field in America. Why did the war happen in West Virginia?
Because of what is in the ground here, and because of the shape of the ground itself. Southern West Virginia sits on some of the best steam coal on earth. Low sulfur, burns hot, burns keen enough that the United States Navy wanted it in the boilers of its warships.
Good coal. So what?
Good coal and non-union labor. The northern fields, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, were organized. They had contracts. They had a wage floor. West Virginia did not.
So West Virginia coal is cheaper.
Cheaper. And it undercuts every union contract in the country, which means the northern union men could not just sit still and watch. If southern West Virginia stayed open shop, their own contracts died of the competition.
So the union has to come south.
The union has to come south, or it dies in the north, and every operator in America knows it. That is why Logan County, a county most Americans could not find with two hands on a map, became the most watched piece of dirt in the industry.
And the shape of the ground?
Look at the terrain. Southern West Virginia is not open country. It is a folded stack of ridges with a creek at the bottom of every fold. Each hollow has one road in and one road out.
So each town is a bottle.
Each town is a bottle, and the company holds the cork. Put two men with rifles at the mouth of a hollow, and nobody organizes anything inside it. The mountains that made the coal valuable also made the people easy to keep apart.
And the men down there, who were they?
That is the other half of it, and it is the half the operators built on purpose. A crew down one of these mines was mountain-born West Virginians, black men who had come up out of the South, and immigrants, Italians, Hungarians, Poles, brought in by the boatload.
Three groups who cannot even talk to each other.
That was the design. Recruit men who do not share a language, house them in separate rows, and they will never agree on anything long enough to strike.
Did it work?
For 20 years it worked perfectly. And the single most important thing that happens in this entire story is the day it stops working.
Meaning?
Meaning that when they finally walked, they walked together. Native, black, and immigrant, in one column, up one road. Whatever else you take from this broadcast, take that. They lost every time they were three groups. They terrified the entire country the one time they were one.
So, when does the shooting start?
1912. 9 years before Blair Mountain, on two creeks in Kanawha County, Paint Creek and Cabin Creek. This is the rehearsal. And everything that happens in 1921 is already in it.
What happens?
The contract runs out in April. The operators refuse the 7 demands. The men walk. And on the 10th of May, the operators bring in the Baldwin-Felts Agency. More than 300 armed guards into 2 narrow valleys.
300 for 2 creeks.
300 under Albert Felts and his brother Lee. And the evictions start. Some 14,000 people are put out of company houses across those valleys, and the tent colonies go up in the creek bottoms. Holly Grove is one of them.
Remember that name.
Remember Holly Grove. Now into this comes an 80-year-old woman in a black dress and a bonnet, off the train alone.
80?
Mary Harris Jones. Mother Jones. She had buried a husband and 4 children in a yellow fever epidemic in Memphis. Lost everything she owned in the Chicago fire, and then spent 40 years walking into places exactly like this one.
And she does what? Gives a speech?
She gives speeches on the courthouse steps and in the creek beds, and she is very good at it. She calls the miners her boys. She tells them the mine guards are hirelings and the governor is a coward, and she says it where the governor can hear.
And the state's answer?
Martial law. Governor William Glasscock declares it on the 2nd of September 1912. Then he lifts it. Then he declares it again. Then again. 3 times in 6 months, the Constitution goes on and off in 2 valleys like a light switch.
And under martial law, who is the court?
A military commission. Civilians tried by officers for speech. That is the part the national press eventually could not stomach.
All right. The train.
The 7th of February, 1913. Night. Holly Grove is a tent colony. Canvas, families, a creek. And the train comes up the line with steel plate bolted to the sides of it.
An armored train.
The miners called it the Bull Moose Special. Sheriff Bonner Hill aboard, Baldwin Felt's men aboard, and mounted on it, machine guns.
And it does not stop.
It does not stop. It runs past the tents in the dark and fires into them.
Into the tents, with families in them.
About 100 machine gun rounds went through the house of a striker named Cesco Estep. He got his wife and his child into the cellar. He went back up for something, and the burst took him in the doorway. He died there.
And the men who did it?
Nothing. No conviction. The train went back down the line.
Then what?
Then the women of Holly Grove went out to the railroad in the dark with tools and tore up the track so that it could not come back.
The women tore up the track.
One of them was named Sarah Blizzard. Hold on to that surname, too. Her son is going to be standing on Blair Mountain in 8 years.
And Mother Jones?
Arrested on the 13th of February, charged with inciting to riot and conspiracy to commit murder, tried by that military commissioner Pratt, and sentenced to 20 years.
20 years. She was past 80.
Past 80, held 85 days, and she caught pneumonia in custody. And this is where it turns, because she got a message out to a United States Senator named John Worth Kern.
And
the United States Senate opened an investigation into what was happening in the West Virginia coal fields. A new governor, Henry Hatfield, let her out and forced a settlement.
So they won?
They won a 9-hour day and the right to trade where they liked on Paint Creek. Cabin Creek held out until July. Perhaps 50 people died violently in those valleys, and more than that, quietly, of hunger and cold in the tents.
And the mine guards?
The mine guard system was not abolished. It was the first demand on the list, and it survived the strike completely intact.
So it is going to happen again.
It is going to happen again, 7 years later, in a town of 800 people called Matewan.
Where is Matewan?
Mingo County, far southwest corner of the state, right on the Tug Fork River, with Kentucky on the other bank. 800 people, one main street called Mate Street, with the railroad running down the middle of it.
And in 1920?
In 1920, the Union finally comes into Mingo County, and it comes fast. Thousands of men sign cards in a few weeks. The Stone Mountain Coal Company fires every man who signs, and then does the other thing.
The houses.
The houses. So on the 19th of May, 1913, Baldwin Felt's detectives get off the morning train from Brewfield with eviction orders. Albert Feltz is needing them. His brother Lee is with him.
The same Feltz brothers from Paint Creek.
The same men, 8 years older. They go up to the Stone Mountain camp, and they put 6 families out into the rain. Then they walk back down to the depot to catch the 5 o'clock train home.
And somebody is waiting.
The chief of police is waiting. His name is Sid Hatfield. He is about 27. He used to work in these mines himself. And he is the first thing this story has that the company cannot buy.
He cannot be bought?
The company had already offered the mayor, Cabell Testaman, $500 a month to allow machine guns on the roofs in town. Testaman turned it down and said the town was not for sale. That is the mayor, and Hatfield is his chief.
So what happens on the street?
Both sides produce a piece of paper. Hatfield says he has a warrant for the arrest of the detectives. Albert Feltz says he has a warrant for the arrest of Hatfield. Testaman looks at the detective's warrant and says out loud in the street that it is bogus.
And then?
And then somebody fires. Nobody has ever established who. It lasts less than a minute at a range of a few feet on a street with a railroad down the middle of it.
How many?
10 men on the ground. 7 Baldwin Feltz detectives, including Albert Feltz and his brother Lee. 2 miners, and Mayor Cabell Testaman, shot in the stomach. He died the next day.
7 detectives. Dead. in 1 minute.
Understand what that meant to the coalfields. For 20 years, the Baldwin Felts Agency had been the thing you could not fight. They came, they emptied your house, and nothing happened to them, ever. And in Matewan, in under a minute, 7 of them stopped being invincible.
So Sid Hatfield becomes what? A hero?
He becomes the most famous man in Appalachia inside a week. The newspapers call him Two-Gun Sid. He shares a surname with the Hatfields of the old feud on that same river, which the press cannot resist. Men name their sons after him.
And is he clean?
Here is where we tell it straight, rather than tell it pretty. About 2 weeks after the mayor died, Sid Hatfield married the mayor's widow, Jessie.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And the operator's newspapers ran with that for the rest of his life.
Ran with what exactly?
That Sid Hatfield shot Cabell Testament himself to clear the way to the man's wife.
Is there anything behind it?
It was never proven. No charge for it ever stuck. And every man on that street was firing at arm's length, inside a cloud of powder smoke, where nobody could see who hit whom.
So we do not know.
We do not know. What we do know is that the marriage handed his enemies the one weapon they had against a man they could not beat in court. Because they did try him in court.
For the 7 detectives.
Him and more than 20 others for murder in the spring of 1921. And a Mingo County jury acquitted every one of them.
Because the jury was local.
Because the jury was local, and every man on it knew exactly what an eviction in the rain looks like, which taught the operators one lesson very clearly.
That courts were useless to them.
That in southern West Virginia, a court was useless to them. Remember that sentence. It explains everything that happens next, including the choice of the courtroom they finally do use. Meanwhile, Mingo County has come apart. In May of 1921, there are 3 days of continuous shooting across the Tug Fork Valley. Miners on one side of the river, guards and state police on the other. The governor puts the county under martial law, and this time it stays on.
What does that actually mean for a man living there?
It means you may not hold a meeting. You may not gather in the road. You may not speak against the state, in print or out loud. And you can be picked up without a warrant and held without a charge. Hundreds were.
So the union is illegal.
In practice, the union is illegal in the county where it is strongest. And into that, on the 1st of August, comes a summons for Sid Hatfield.
Another trial.
Another county. He is called to McDowell County, to the courthouse at Welch, on a charge out of a shooting at the Mohawk Mine. He goes. He brings his deputy and friend, Ed Chambers. Both men bring their wives.
Their wives.
Sally Chambers and Jessie Hatfield. And both men are unarmed, because they have been told to surrender their weapons before entering the court. And they did.
They walk up the steps, unarmed.
They walk up the steps, unarmed, in daylight, in front of the courthouse of McDowell County, with their wives beside them. And Baldwin Felts men standing at the top of the steps shot them both down.
On the courthouse steps.
On the courthouse steps. Hatfield died there. Chambers went down the stairs, and one of the agents walked after him and shot him again in the back of the head, while his wife was on the steps screaming at them to stop.
And the agent?
Pleaded self-defense against 2 unarmed men. Not one of them was ever convicted of anything.
Who were they?
One of them is worth naming because he's the reason the miners stopped believing anything. Charles Everett Lively. For years he had been a union man in good standing. He ran a restaurant where miners ate and talked. He held the union office.
And he was a detective the entire time.
The entire time. A Baldwin Felts operative drawing a company salary, sitting in the union hall taking the minutes.
So there was nowhere safe.
That is the sentence that put 10,000 rifles on a mountain.
Then say it as a list. What has a miner in Mingo County learned by August of 1921?
That the scale lies.
That the eviction is legal.
That the guard has a badge. That the man taking the minutes at the union hall works for the other side.
That martial law says you may not even meet.
That the one court that ever acquitted you is now closed to you.
And that a man can walk up the steps of a public courthouse at noon, unarmed, beside his wife.
And be shot dead in front of her. and nobody's punished. That is the whole ledger. Every lawful door, one at a time, closed.
So there is one place left to take it.
There is one place left to take it. And on the 7th of August, 5,000 miners gathered on the lawn of the state capitol in Charleston to hear what their union was going to do about it.
And what did the union say?
District 17 is run by two men, Frank Keeney and Fred Mooney. They stand on the Capitol steps and they ask for lawful remedies. End martial law in Mingo. Investigate the killings. Petition the governor.
And the men on the lawn?
The men on the lawn have just buried Sid Hatfield. They have run out of patience with petitions. Over the next 2 weeks, something begins that nobody in the union leadership actually orders.
They start walking.
They start gathering. At Len's Creek, near a town called Marmet, just south of Charleston, men come in off the trains and out of the hollows, in threes and tens and hundreds. Many of them are still carrying the rifles they were issued in France 3 years earlier.
How many in the end?
Estimates run from 7,000 up to 20. The number most often given for the column that reaches the mountain is 10,000. Some counts go to 13. Nobody kept a roll for obvious reasons.
And how do you organize 10,000 armed men with no orders?
Like an army, because most of them had been in one. They set pickets. They had passwords. They had a commissary. They took vehicles when they needed them and gave receipts for them in the name of the union.
Receipts.
Receipts. That detail tells you what they thought they were doing. Not a mob, a column with paperwork, going to relieve a besieged county.
And the bandanas?
Red, tied at the neck, so that in the smoke and the trees you could tell who was on your side. That is the uniform of this army. Bib overalls, a rifle, and a square of red cloth.
And that is where the word redneck comes from.
That is the story everybody tells, and we are not going to tell it, because it is not true. The word is older than 1921, and it was in print before these men were born.
So why does everyone say it?
Because the true version is better. These men did not invent the word. They took a word that was already used to sneer at them, tied it around their throats, and walked up a mountain with it.
Does anybody try to stop them?
Their own leadership does. Keeney and Mooney go to Marmet and stand on a car and beg them to go home. They know exactly how this ends. And on the 24th of August, a lot of the men actually start turning back.
So it nearly stopped.
It nearly stopped twice, and the second time is one of the strangest scenes in American labor history, because it involves Mother Jones and a telegram.
Go on.
She climbs up in front of them and reads out a telegram, which she says is from President Warren Harding, promising to abolish the mine guard system if they disperse.
Is it real?
The men ask to see it. She will not hand it over. Keeney wires Washington to check, and the answer comes back that no such telegram was ever sent.
She forged it.
Keeney climbed up after her and told 10,000 men that it was a fake.
In front of her.
In front of her. Whether she wrote it herself or was handed it by somebody else and believed it has been argued for 100 years and never settled.
But she read it out.
She read it out. A woman who had spent 40 years pushing miners into fights was standing on a car trying to pull them out of one with a piece of paper that did not hold.
Why would she?
Because she was past 80, she had already seen Paint Creek, and she could count.
She knew what was up on that ridge.
She knew exactly what was up on that ridge, and she would rather be called a liar in front of 10,000 men than stand there and watch it happen to them.
Did they forgive her?
Never in the same way. It is the last great scene of her life in the coal fields, and she loses it.
So what put them back on the road?
State police at a place called Sharples on the 27th of August. A detachment moved into the village where Union families were living, and there was shooting, and miners were killed.
And the men who were going home?
The men who were going home turned around and went back up the road. After Sharples, nobody could have stopped it. Not Keeney, not Mother Jones, not the president.
And who is waiting for them?
The sheriff of Logan County, Don Chapin. And Chapin is the cleanest example in this entire story of the thing the miners were actually fighting.
Which is?
that the law and the company were the same office.
He was a real sheriff, though, elected.
Properly elected by the voters of Logan County. And he also drew money from the Logan County Coal Operators Association. The same association funded his deputies.
How much money?
The exact figures are still argued over a century later. The arrangement is not argued over at all. It was open, it was in the books, and in Logan County, it was ordinary.
So no union organizer ever got into Logan County?
Not one. For years. Chapin had men on the train platforms. If you got off at Logan and you could not explain yourself, you were beaten and put back on the train going the other way. That was the system, and everybody knew it, including the state government.
And how many men does he have on the mountain?
Around 3,000 by the end. Sheriff's deputies, volunteer militia, state police, and men the coal companies sent up with a rifle and a promise. About 90 came from Bluefield, around 40 from Huntington, something like 120 state police.
3,000 against 10,000. That sounds like the sheriff loses.
It sounds like it, until you look at the ground. Blair Mountain is not a peak. It is a long ridge, Spruce Fork Ridge, running for miles, and it stands between the miners and Logan Town. There are 2 ways over it worth taking, and they are gaps.
And he's sitting on the gaps.
He's dug in on the crest with trenches and machine gun nests looking down the slope. Below him, the hillside is rhododendron thicket, waist high, tangled. You cannot run through it, and you cannot see through it.
So the miners have to come uphill, into machine guns, through brush.
Uphill, into machine guns, through brush, in August heat, in Appalachian summer. And they did it for 5 days, over and over. The 25th of August, 1921. First contact along the ridge. By the last days of the month, there is a front line 10 to 15 miles long through the trees.
A front line in West Virginia.
A front line with flanking attempts, artillery of a kind, snipers, and a field telephone system. Both sides had veterans of the Argonne running them. It is the Western Front, transplanted into a hardwood forest, with the same men.
And nobody in the rest of the country notices?
The whole country is reading about it. It is on front pages from New York to San Francisco, which is exactly why the men on the ridge start doing things that get a president's attention.
All right. The planes. You opened with the planes.
The planes. And now we do this carefully, because this is the fact everybody repeats, and almost everybody gets slightly wrong. And the true version is heavier than the myth.
Go!
Sheriff Don Chapin hired private aircraft, civilian planes, civilian pilots, on the coal operators' money. And he had them fly over the miners' positions near the towns of Jeffrey, Sharples, and Blair, and drop things out of the cockpit by hand.
What things?
2 gas bombs, meant to make men vomit and run, and 2 homemade explosive bombs, a pipe, gunpowder, and packed around it nuts and bolts, so that the casing becomes shrapnel. Some of what they dropped never went off at all.
And where did they get gas bombs?
Left over from the World War. Surplus. 3 years after the armistice, ordnance built to be used on the German army came down through the trees onto Americans in Logan County, dropped from a private aeroplane hired by a county sheriff.
So it was not the government.
Those 4 bombs were not federal. That matters, and we are going to say it plainly. But do not relax yet, because the federal government was in the air over that mountain too.
Doing what?
On the 1st of September, a squadron of United States Army Air Service planes began flying over Blair Mountain on reconnaissance. They were sent by Brigadier General William Mitchell, Billy Mitchell, the most famous air power officer in America, fresh off sinking a captured German battleship to prove what bombers could do.
And he is now flying over coal miners.
He is. And Mitchell told reporters out loud how he would handle a crowd of miners from the air. With gas. Not to kill them, he said, just to put them down.
He said that publicly.
Publicly, to reporters, in 1921. Though, to be fair to the record, his planes flew observation. They did not drop anything.
So nothing happened to them.
One of those army machines went down on the flight. 4 of the 5 men aboard were killed.
So the only federal servicemen who die in this whole affair
Die in an accident. and the way to go and watch Americans shoot at each other.
So give me the honest sentence. All of it in one line.
Private planes bombed them. The United States Army flew over them, and the President of the United States publicly threatened to send bombers if they did not stop.
That is worse than the myth.
It is worse than the myth, because a myth is one villain, and this is a system. Nobody had to break the law. The sheriff was elected. The detectives were deputized. The planes were rented. The gas was surplus. Every single link was legal.
So how does it end?
On the 2nd of September, President Warren Harding issues a proclamation ordering the men on that mountain to go home. Behind it come roughly 2,100 United States Army regulars under Brigadier General Harry Bandholtz. Some accounts put the federal force at 2,500.
So now it is 10,000 armed miners against the United States Army.
And that is the moment the whole thing collapses. Because they would not do it.
They would not fight?
Not the army. They had spent 5 days shooting at deputies and mine guards without hesitating. Federal troops came over the ridge and it stopped. Most of those men had worn that uniform themselves in France 3 years before.
So they surrendered to the same army they had served in.
Many of them walked down and handed their rifles to the soldiers personally.
Just handed them over.
Some put their old service uniforms on first, so that the surrender would be soldier to soldier.
And the rest?
The rest threw their rifles into the laurel on the way down the mountain. A rifle was worth more than a week's pay, and they would give it to the United States Army before they gave it to Don Chafin.
And the dead?
Nobody knows. That is the honest answer. Estimates run from about 20 to over 100. The figures usually given are somewhere between 50 and 100 on the miners' side, and about 30 on Chafin's.
How can a country not count its dead?
Because the men who died on the miners' side were carried off the mountain by their own families and buried in hollows, quietly, without a certificate, by people who had just been on the losing side of a war and did not want a name on a piece of paper.
Now the bill.
985 miners indicted. Murder, conspiracy, accessory, and treason against the state of West Virginia.
Can a state even charge treason?
West Virginia's constitution says it can, levying war against the state. It is one of the rarest charges in American law, and here it is filed nearly 1,000 times over one summer.
And where do they try them? Because you told me a local jury would never convict.
That is exactly the problem the prosecution had. And they solved it by moving the trials as far away from the coal fields as the state can physically reach. All the way to the eastern panhandle, to Charlestown in Jefferson County.
Why does that name sound familiar?
Because 63 years earlier, in that same courthouse, an abolitionist named John Brown was convicted of treason and hanged for it.
The same building.
The same building, although in 1859, that building stood in Virginia.
Because West Virginia did not exist yet.
West Virginia did not exist yet. It was born out of the war John Brown helped start. It broke off from Virginia and joined the Union in 1863.
So a state that was itself created by breaking away.
Put its own coal miners on trial for breaking away. In the room where the most famous treason trial in American history had already happened.
And who is the main defendant?
William Blizzard, Bill Blizzard, the son of Sarah Blizzard, the woman who went out with the other women of Holly Grove and pulled up the railroad track in front of the armored train 9 years earlier.
The same family, from the first act to the last.
The same family. That is not a coincidence. That is what a coal field is. The same surnames twice, 9 years apart.
And is there anything from that trial worth keeping?
One detail nobody who hears it ever forgets. The defendants were out on bail in Charlestown for weeks, with nothing to do all day. And so, while they were on trial for making war against the state of West Virginia, they played baseball against the local teams.
On trial for treason, playing baseball.
And on the 27th of May, 1922, the jury acquitted Bill Blizzard of treason.
Acquitted.
Most of them walked eventually. Some men served time. Nobody more than a few years. The last of them paroled in 1925. As a criminal proceeding, the treason trials failed.
Then the Union won?
The Union was destroyed. That is the thing about this story that people are not ready for. They beat the charges and they lost everything.
How?
The trials cost money. Defending nearly 1,000 men in a courthouse 300 miles from home emptied the treasury of District 17. The organizers were tied up in court for years. And then coal itself went into a slump.
Give me the numbers.
1920, 400,000 members in the United Mine Workers of America. 1929, 84,000. In southern West Virginia, where they had fought, membership went from more than 50,000 down to a fraction of that.
So, Chaffin wins.
Chaffin wins on the mountain, though not for long, and not in a way that helps anybody. He was convicted in federal court in 1924 for violating prohibition law and sent to Atlanta. Not for anything he did to a miner, for liquor.
Now tell me about the school books. You promised me that at the top.
In the 1930s, the federal government paid writers as relief work to produce a guidebook to the history of every state. Real historians, heavily funded, state by state. And the West Virginia volume came in with the mine wars in it.
Which is correct. It happened.
It happened 19 years earlier, and men were still alive with the scars. But the governor of West Virginia at the time, Homer Holt, objected to how the industrial violence was written up, and he had leverage nobody expected a governor to use.
What leverage?
The New Deal itself, the state's own relief programs. The account that has come down is blunt. The coverage of the mine wars comes out, or the federal money for West Virginia has a problem.
And it worked?
It worked for 2 generations. Children were raised in Logan and Mingo counties in the exact hollows, walking past the mountain on the way to school. And it was not in the book. Some of them learned it from a grandfather, or they did not learn it at all.
The largest armed uprising since the Civil War in your own county. And it is not in your own textbook.
There were 1 million rounds of brass in the dirt 2 ridges over, and nothing on the page.
All right. Then how does it actually end? Because you cannot leave it there.
It ends 12 years after the mountain. And it ends with a signature instead of a rifle.
Whose signature?
June 1933, Congress passes the National Industrial Recovery Act, and buried inside it is one short paragraph, Section 7A.
Saying what?
That workers have the right to organize and to bargain through representatives of their own choosing.
That is it? A paragraph?
That is it. And union organizers walked back into southern West Virginia, into Logan County, into the hollows where Don Chapin's men used to meet the train. And the line they used was 5 words. The president wants you to join.
And the men who had been beaten for 20 years believed that?
They signed by the tens of thousands in weeks. District 17 came back from almost nothing to bigger than it had ever been. By 1935, southern West Virginia, the field nobody could organize, the field that took 10,000 rifles and got nowhere, was Union.
So go back to the list. The 7 demands from 1912.
Recognize the Union. Yes. End the mine guard system. Yes, West Virginia outlawed it. Let a man buy his food where he likes. Yes. Put our own man on the scale. Yes. And a ton shall weigh 2,000 pounds.
Every line.
Every line on the paper they were shuttered. For in 1912, they had in law by the middle of the 1930s. They lost the battle in 5 days, and they got the whole list in 12 years.
And the mountain itself?
Still there, and still full. For decades, a local man named Kenny King walked that ridge with a metal detector and pulled the battle back out of the ground, one piece at a time. Later, archaeologists mapped 15 separate combat sites up there and catalogued more than 1,000 artifacts.
What kind of artifacts?
Rifle brass, shotgun shells, coins, batteries. 2 loaded pistols somebody dropped in the Laurel in 1921 and never went back for.
So it is a protected battlefield.
That fight took another 10 years. Blair Mountain went onto the National Register of Historic Places in 2008. It was taken back off in 2009, and it was restored in 2018 after litigation when the removal was ruled to have been made in error.
Why would anyone take a battlefield off the register?
Because there is still coal in it, and the modern way to get coal out of an Appalachian ridge is to pick the top of the ridge off. Mining permits have covered ground on and around that battlefield for years.
So the coal industry could remove the actual mountain that the fight against the coal industry happened on.
That is the position, stated plainly. The last act of the erasure would not be a textbook. It would be the geography.
And has anything come back?
In 2015, a museum opened on Mate Street in Matewan, the same street where the 10 men fell in 1920. It was built largely by local people, some of them descendants, and it exists because for a century, nobody else was going to build it.
The town built its own record.
The town built its own record. And then in 2018, something happened in West Virginia that made every one of these names come back at once.
What?
The public school teachers walked out. Not some counties, all 55 counties in the state at the same time. And they stayed out for 9 school days until they got their raise.
55 out of 55.
Every county. And when they filled the Capitol grounds in Charleston, the same lawn where 5,000 miners stood in August of 1921, a great many of them were wearing red bandanas.
On purpose.
Entirely on purpose. In a state where it was kept out of the school books, the school teachers put it back on. So that is West Virginia. Not the poorest day jokes, not the postcard. This.
1912. They had to demand in writing that a ton be 2,000 pounds. 1921. 10,000 of them on a ridge with gas coming out of the sky. And 985 indicted for treason afterwards. Nobody was ever convicted for what was done to them. Not the man who fired into the tents at Holly Grove. Not the men on the courthouse steps at Welch. Not one. 5 days to lose the mountain. 12 years to win the list. The brass is still in that dirt. 100 years of rain has not moved it. And they took it out of the books, and the grandchildren put it back. That is the part nobody teaches you. A country can lose a fact. It just cannot lose it forever.